Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Wealth Edit Wednesday. We are so excited about our guest today. Today we have Becca Stevens who is the founder of Thistle Farms in Nashville. But not only have you founded Thistle Farms, which we're so excited for you to share about what that is and how all our listeners can learn more about it. But you also are an Episcopal priest. You're an author. You have received so many honors for the work that you do with women who are coming out of trafficking, providing housing, medical care, counseling. Anyway, I was telling Becca that we have a friend, Olivia Hales, who's on the call and a member of the Wealth Edit, who sent us a package months ago with some candles from Thistle Farms. And within that package, there was literature on what Becca was doing. And Lauren and I immediately just were like so impressed. We looked you up and then we thought we've got to get her to share with our members. So this has been a long time in the coming, but we are so excited to have you, Becca. And maybe just start off with sharing with our members like who you are and part of your story of how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. And I'm talking to you from the chapel where I'm still an Episcopal priest. I just celebrated 30 years last week. This is an image that my son drew for us. It's all very homemade. It's this tiny little safe, fun place on the Vanderbilt campus.
Yeah.
Where Thistle Farms started. And Olivia and everybody that keeps sharing the story are my heroes, because that's how it's worked. It's people hear a story of hope and they want to be part of it. Even when there's some sad parts of it, they want to be a part of it. So for me, it began this work of working with women survivors of trafficking and addiction and all kinds of gender-based violence and trauma. Began for me because my dad, who was also an Episcopal priest, was killed when I was a little girl by a drunk driver here in Nashville. And then, like many children, when you have one tragedy and one trauma, it just welcomes other ones. And that happened for me. So I began to experience sexual abuse, and it started in the church when I was 6. And it went on in my clearest memory almost 3 years. The last experience was right before I was 9 years old. And I think I had this amazing mom. I had some beautiful siblings, but I was a pretty broken person. And I didn't realize that I was going to have a lot in common with the women I was going to meet when I became ordained, who were on the streets and in jail. And it was like, my heart was full of compassion for them, and realizing, we could have changed places pretty easily. And what I really kept thinking about was, what would I want if I was coming off the streets? And I grew up poor, and I always knew that money was a huge factor, not just access to treatment or help, but about independence and life choices. So started just an independent community. It's not a faith-based group. It's really all about just love and providing sanctuary for women and saying, come stay free for 2 years. We'll find all the resources you need. And then we created the bath and body care company. And, in the midst of all that, I got married to a country music writer. We had 3 children. We've been married for about 33 years. He's one of the best men in the world, Marcus Hummon. So music and storytelling were always a huge part of Thistle Farms and a huge part of our life. And it just kept growing. I mean, we started with one house, and now it's grown into the largest justice enterprise run by women survivors in the United States. And we have more than, I think, 570 beds at the latest count around the US. I just passed a team this morning that is our national network team, and they're referring 15 women today into safe houses and safe beds around the country, which is, what we used to be able to do in a year. Yeah. And we have 36 global partners that we have stuck with through this pandemic that's hit some countries, economically for small groups even harder. So I love this work. I wake up grateful every day, and that's why I'm here and how I got right here.
That is amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that. Our heart was breaking during this pandemic because, we were thinking some women are trapped, so how did y'all kind of deal with women in lockdown? Did that change anything about how you served your community?
Well, if you're working with survivors, you realize that a pandemic is no time when anybody quits. I mean, It's let's go. And I heard women talking early on about this was the first time they felt safe at home, not trapped.
So good.
So lockdown didn't mean that you were in prison. Lockdown meant you were safe and you knew that you were going to have your needs met and that you could still reach out in a million ways to community. I mean, we pivoted like freaking ballerinas, I promise you. We started making, the hand sanitizer along with everything else. We were mailing things out, and we did well during the pandemic, even though our cafes shut down, even though so much of like all the travel that I do to help bring new communities on board, all shut down. It was an amazing time in our community. And I think one of the myths out there is that this work is always so hard and it's overwhelming and there's burnout, but there's truly strength and joy in the midst of the horror stories. In the midst of some devastating relapses, it's like we celebrate births, marriages, and graduations, and we laugh as much as we cry, even in pandemics.
I love that. And I think about, we had a meeting last night. We were talking about communities and about how important it is. Like real community is built when you can celebrate together and when you can mourn together. And as long as you have that community around you, I mean, having lost a spouse and now having two daughters that don't have a dad, kind of that, what I have seen in my personal life and now in my business life even, and as we've built the Wealth Edit, if you have community around you that loves and supports you, it's like such a strong force that can keep you on track. And there's nothing that can take the place of that, just that community. And so if, like you said, if you're taking in 15 new women today, what does that process look like for them? So they get accepted, and then what happens?
They're not coming to us. These were all referrals. We do have women all the time, but I'm just saying yesterday was all about referrals. But before that, you can't say stuff to me like I lost my spouse and I'm raising my two kids and then me just gloss over that. That is okay. And I just want to say, as being a child that was raised by a single mother, I'm already in love with you. And my mom was where I got really all my life lessons. And she was such a strong character, and she used to say that we should always be so grateful that we knew that our dad never would have left us. And, this was just what happened in our life. And, we can honor him by this. But anyway, I just admire you for keep going and how you do it. And my mom used to at least say that her 5 children, she was 35 when it happened, and she had 5 kids, and she was working in daycare. And can you imagine doing daycare during the day, then having 5 kids at night? Is
like that.
The worst nightmare. And what she used to say is she had 5 good reasons to get up every morning. But then she had to say, when we were awful teenagers, she said 13-year-old girls are why tiger eat their young.
I was about to say, were you always nice to your mom?
I know.
Mine are 14 and 16, and I'm like, oh, this is different. But thank you for saying that.
Yeah, about the community, honestly, I think all data supports, if you want to heal communities, you invest in women, period. That is what we do. That things you think aren't economics are economics. And that means, again, it can be as simple as we sit around and we're weaving mats together. But as we're sitting in that circle as women, we're generating income, we're telling stories, and we are sharing. My mom was a single mom, you're a single mom. We start talking and we start feeling safe and we start feeling healing in that journey. And it's always been that way. And I think community of women is the oldest entity for healing the world knows. And what I know about small groups of women in community too, like what you're doing, is it not only builds wealth and builds support, you know, it also holds us accountable. And it does also hold us up when something horrific happens. So I'm a huge, huge believer in it. You know, if you want to kill a village, rape the women. That's why it's an act of war. That's why men do it specifically to other men's wives, daughters, children, friends, cousins, whatever. But if you want to heal a community, just heal a woman, let her be in community to gain economic independence. And I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it in polygamist communities in the heart of Kenya. I've seen it in refugee camps in Greece. I've seen it, you know, on some of the worst street corners in Nashville, Tennessee, where we're located. It's just what I believe is gospel truth. I mean, that truth.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is an amazing thing that I'm going to keep with me for the rest of my life. I mean, if you want to heal communities, invest in women. It's just so much a part of the fabric of, you know, what we're trying to do, because women feel so self-conscious around money, talking about money, and the work you're doing. I think what's very interesting about our community is there is such a philanthropic heartbeat behind the women, or with the women in our community. And like you said, sometimes thinking about, you know, helping women coming out of sex trafficking, fill in the blank, like you have a stirring in your heart to help, but it seems like an overwhelming job. So like, how do you just start? You know what I mean?
Y'all have all started. Don't even act like you haven't even started on that journey. Don't believe that. I'm not even going to go with that. I'm going to say, you know, my mantra is do the next small thing. Do the next small thing. Whether that's deciding, you know, I'm going to purchase my soap from Thistle Farms. I'm going to light a candle from Thistle Farms. That's huge. I mean, that honestly transforms lives. You know that. That's how we grow big businesses. That's how we have big impacts. Is people choose how they're going to use their consumer goods. Do the next small thing. Oh my gosh, Olivia has her candle lit right now. Go, Olivia. But also, you know, all of us have social media. I mean, if you want to do one small thing that would really help, follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram. I'm telling stories. I'm fixing to go to Botswana, and I'm going to share the story of 4 survivors there that think, I mean, they can't even dream of entrepreneurial ideas. They're thinking about selling biscuits, basically. It's biltong on the side of the road. And I'm like, no, that's not either safe nor interesting. We are going to dream a beautiful company that's going to weave in stories and create something beautiful. But it's like, you have to have a group of women and some financial backing to make that begin to happen. And I mean, when I say financial backing, it's like, you know, $8,000 to $10,000 can get a business off the ground for the women, because we've already got the infrastructure built in. But I would love people to begin to follow that journey with me. I'm going in 2.5 weeks, and to share that story, to be social media advocates, to say, okay, here's 4 women in the middle of the Kalahari Desert that believe life can be better, that they don't have to stay in poverty and sell themselves, that for people who are willing to buy them. You know, too long we've done that. So that's the second thing, social media advocacy, and be in partnership with me. Anybody can DM me on Instagram. I look at it every day and I will answer it. The next thing I think that is really a big deal, besides how we spend our money and how we do social media and advocacy, is to speak your truth. Your story is a powerful story. You know, as soon as you speak your truth, other people begin to hear, and it happens through stories and it happens through conversation. One of the things that I mean, I truly believe is that when we are not afraid of our stories, we begin to control the story instead of the story controlling us. Mm. And so to find places where you can speak your truth in love and, really help dispel myths, like why women are on the streets, why women are in prison, why women come off. It's like Me Too made it okay, the Me Too movement, to begin to speak that truth. So speaking your truth is the third one. And the last one I want to say is don't make justice like a side item, like I live my life and then I do my justice work. Mm-hmm. That is so life sapping. It just drains us because we feel bad. Instead, just integrate justice into your daily life. Integrate justice into your daily life. It means, how I dress, how I spend my time and my energy and my prayers. But I integrate justice into that, and it will form everything else. It will help cultivate that community. It'll help you figure out what it is you want to do with not just your money, but your vote. All of those things begin to happen. So those are my top ones.
I love that fourth one too, because especially, like for me, if it's like when you're healing from something as well, which I would imagine that all of us are healing from something. When you start living life that way, it is so healing to you. I mean, I know it starts off with this desire to help others, but what I have found is that for me, that has been an integral part of healing. And it's like you get your mind outside of yourself and you begin pouring into others. But then in turn, it gives you purpose and meaning. And the other day I was feeling down and I just thought to myself, I just need to go figure out where somebody needs help, because that is an immediate remedy in my heart for like getting out of myself, you know, and
that's why it's like, I think they say love others and love self. They're dependent on each other. Self-care and care for others, it's dependent on each other.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the things that I loved was both going to therapy and cleaning out toilets at the homeless shelter as an intern. Mm-hmm. They were both part of what it meant for me to do some of that healing work. Both. You can't do cleaning out toilets and think it's all going to be better. But if you're just going to therapy and you're not engaging in the world, it can be very lonely and hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great advice and so true. I feel like I'm having a counseling session now.
I know, I like this so much.
I love it. So I'd love to get more of insight into like, what does it look like day to day with your operation in Nashville, and so the women move into different shelters, and I know there's one in Nashville. Are there other?
Right. Don't call them shelters. They're not shelters.
Yeah, okay.
Prairie House shelter to me means that, it's a crappy place to live. That's what shelter sounds like. I mean, if we built shelters like cathedrals, not only would churches be healing, but so would those places. Mm-hmm. So it's a home. It's not a treatment center, not a halfway house, not a shelter. This is just a home with 5 women that come to live together. Just like if Ivy, Emily, Lauren, and I decided to get a house together.
Okay.
Just live together. There's no authority that lives in the house with you. It's just us coming together in community to say, tell me, Ivy, what you need today. Mm-hmm. And the rest of us try to respond, and we try to be together on this journey. So what it looks like is when you first come in, you may be coming out of prison, you might be coming off the streets, you might be coming from a treatment center. You come in, and the first thing is you take care of all of the really basic self needs. Let's go get an assessment from a doctor. Let's go get an assessment from the courts about what your court record is. Let's go get an assessment about your credit. Let's look at your credit without freaking out. Let's go look at, if you have children, what do you owe them back childcare support? Let's go get a mental health assessment. All of those things. Takes 3 or 4 months to get all of that stuff done. So you don't work, you're paid a stipend, because we know if you don't help support women in that first part, they're going to go back to some of the places that are the most dangerous for them to try to get enough money to live. That's why halfway houses don't work for so many women, because if you're asking somebody that's been on the street since they were 15 to pay $125 a week, guess how they're going to get the $125 a week? They're going to hustle. So the first part is, well, it's just enough money not to get into trouble, but maybe you need to you want to get your nails done, or you want to be able to send some money to your kids, whatever the thing is. It's just a little money to be able to do something with. And then, you start really intensive therapy, outpatient stuff. You start shadowing some of the mentors. They might go take you to a meeting. They might take you somewhere, but you go with somebody, you're not alone. And then after about 6 months, you can, you've done all these classes and you continue to do that. You can start working part-time. Almost all the women start at Thistle Farms, but you don't have to, but it's a good place to start, because we're trauma-informed workplace, which means we're not trying to trip each other up by doing stuff that's not safe. And it's a good place. So if you do get triggered, there's a place to go and calm down and figure out how to engage again. Start savings accounts. There's a match savings program. You continue the journey. The whole second year you're in residence is really all about preparing to begin to live on your own. And so it may be going to court with you and saying we have to talking to the judge about reducing fines, maybe about getting education. You wanted to be a chef, you wanted to go back and get your nursing, whatever the dream is. But for some people, that the dream is to continue at Thistle Farms and to continue to grow this multinational company. And they see that as a great ministry and a great tool for healing other women, and that their story can be a light for so many people. So it's just a variety. And then at 2 years you graduate, but you're a sister for life. That's, the residential director is a graduate from 2012 or something like that, or maybe 2010, 2012, but she went back. Her dream was to go back and get her undergraduate and master's degree in social work and come back and direct the whole program.
Love that. So how many women do you employ at Thistle Farms?
I don't know. I'm doing a new employee lunch at 11 this morning. So I think there's like 6 new employees. The total number of employees is something like 110. And I think about 65% are residents or graduates. So maybe 65.
You mentioned there's referrals coming in. How can we just have our eyes and ears open to something that looks like trafficking wherever we are?
So I would say the easiest thing to do is if you feel worried or whatever about something you're seeing, there is a hotline. It's run by Polaris. They have a national hotline against sex trafficking. But, to me, it seems like so much of it now happens on really porn sites, and there's all kinds of advocacy and movements about holding massive social media sites accountable for some of the back page stuff. That Snapchat is another one Ivy's saying that is happening. But what I would recommend is if you are interested in thinking about advocacy or national movements to stop some of the trafficking, INCOSI is the one that we've been working closely with. We just hired a full-time person to be in there just to represent our anti-trafficking interests. But INCOSI is NCOSE, the National Coalition Against Sex Exploitation, Sexual Exploitation. But they're working really hard, to help people shut down sites where most of it is happening. Because when you see it on the streets, basically you're seeing someone who's being, prostituted and trafficked. I mean, really, in my mind, almost all prostitution is being trafficked when you have somebody that is pimping you and abusing you in so many ways, including through continued access to drugs. But, you know, when you see that, really, at that point, there is a lot going on. We do outreaches sometimes to try to bring women off the streets, but it's really hard if you're an individual to think, okay, well, I'm going to go get this woman and do this all by myself. But again, if you look at our website at Thistle Farms, you'll see in every city or community we're in, we have sister programs that can help you in your local community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and there's so much I want to look into. All right, so we are going to wrap up the call with this question that we ask all of our guests, but why did you say yes to the Wealth Edit?
I said yes because I think women coming together to talk about economics and wealth and prosperity is a way that we can love our community. You know, I think all of us want to do this and be well and have our families well. And I just wanted us to remember, maybe for 30 minutes together, that that's the same thing that women in refugee camps want. It's the same thing that women who are walking across Mexico and enduring horrible abuse want. It's the same thing that a woman sitting in prison longing, you know, to make restitution wants. And so that when we can bring other women along with us in that journey to prosperity, to wealth, to well-being, that we're doing the work of love. And that's what my whole life is about.
Thank you so much. I mean, really, it is so good for us to gather in our membership community. This is our favorite part of what we do. It's just meeting amazing women, really doing incredible work across specifically the Southeast. We've had speakers from other places, but there's just something really beautiful about women gathering together, like you said, and just taking a moment to center around all that you said today. We love for this to be a discussion. So if anyone has a question, feel free to ask it to Becca in the chat. But I'll just share Ivy's story while, in the event that someone has a question. My teenage daughter recently knew a girl in her high school that was lured into trafficking ring via Snapchat. The situation was very intense. My brave daughter gathered information that ultimately led to her safe return home before crossing state lines. The girl is now in a similar ministry, going through an intense therapy and beginning healing from the week of exploitation that she experienced. You're uniquely gifted, and the work that you're doing is so very important.
Thank you, Ivy. Thank y'all so much. And people can ask me questions. Again, the easiest thing for me is just scrolling down on my DMs, but you can look at our website and my emails there and all of that, because some of the conversations probably feel more comfortable private than public anyway. But I admire y'all so much and love what y'all are doing. And I'm grateful for the invitation. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful for you. So thanks for being a friend of the Wealth Edit.
And we hope to get to Nashville soon.
Yeah, that's our next stop, our next launch. We're not launching again for a little bit because we've got some other things, but Nashville's our next city. So we hope that we can come and see you.
Well, come have tea with us at the cafe. Come.
That would be awesome. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Becca.
you.
Bye.
Bye.